everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most heart-wrenching and romantic moments in the story. So, grab your tissues. You might need them. We start with Bai Qian finally gave the pill to Bai Qian. But after being bedridden for 600 years, his body was just too weak to handle the powerful elixir. It took several days for his pulse to even stabilize. Seeing him finally looking more energetic with a steady pulse, Bai Qian felt relieved enough to go get some rest herself. But she had barely closed her eyes when Dai Feng rushed in, looking frantic. Bai Qian's heart sank, instantly fearing something had happened to Mo Yuan's primordial spirit. She hurried back to Dai Yon's bedside and once again used the soul-chasing technique to enter his spirit and check on Mo Yuan. As she approached Mo Yuan's spirit, she was met with a vast, surging immortal aura, protecting it. This wasn't Jiyan's power. This aura was turbulent, yet calm. Restrained, yet incredibly powerful. It was so strong that even Bai Qian couldn't get close to Mo Yuan. And then, everything clicked into place. She finally understood why Jiyan had been so hesitant to speak that day, and how he had managed to get the divine herb completely unharmed. It was all because of the Hua. Bai Qian was truly stunned. The Hua! Why would you do all of this for me and not say a single word? Overwhelmed, she knew she had to see him. She rushed to the 9 heavens. The Hua looked up and managed a faint smile in return. Bai Qian stepped forward, intending to take his pulse, but he deftly twisted his wrist and caught her hand in his. He frowned, his voice laced with concern. "What's wrong with your aura?" he asked. Bai Qian looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "I just used the soul-chasing technique and lost my focus. I coughed up a little blood. That's all." The Hua's expression remained calm, but his tone was firm. "I know you're worried about Mo Yuan, but..." The Hua paused for a moment, then feigned indifference, telling Bai Qian that the Heavenly Emperor had ordered him to go to Japan a few days ago to eradicate the divine herbs. And he had brought back a few for her along the way. However, the divine beasts he had encountered looked rather pathetic. Bai Qian noticed the Hua's right hand was injured and deliberately said, "Today, I only saw you using your left hand to hold tea and read books. Shouldn't you move your right hand a bit?" The Hua lowered his head and said that he had only been bitten by the touty beast, and that he had already applied medicine and was fine. Bai Qian had lived for 140,000 years. Nothing in this world could be hidden from her. The touty beast was her to know. Bai Qian excused herself, saying she had to go down to check on the crown prince of the Western Sea, and hurriedly left. Turning away, she was already sobbing uncontrollably. As soon as she left the 9 heavens, Bai Qian rushed to find Jiyan. Jiyan already felt guilty about the Hua's actions, but unable to resist Bai Qian's questioning. He had no choice but to tell her everything about the Hua, obtaining the divine herb to refine the elixir. Jiyan sighed. "Although your husband is still young, his planning is extremely mature. He kept you in the Western Sea, guarding the soul-binding lamp for 3 days and 3 nights, while he went to the Eastern Sea to retrieve the divine herb, using his cultivation to refine the elixir, and gave it to you before Dai Young woke up. It's just a pity that such exquisite cultivation has been completely lost." Bai Qian knew perfectly well that everything the Hua did was to save Mo Yuan for her, and that he had even kept everything from her so she wouldn't feel indebted. After learning the truth, Bai Qian couldn't sit still any longer. All she wanted now was to stay by the Hua's side, to be with him every moment. Late at night, Bai Qian quietly came to the Hua's bedchamber, intending to secretly watch over him while he slept. However, the Hua discovered her. He frowned upon seeing Bai Qian and asked why she had rushed over so quickly what had happened to Dai Young. Bai Qian gave a dry laugh and calmly replied that the matter in the Western Sea had been resolved. She explained that she had simply remembered his injuries and worried that serving him tea and water might be inconvenient. So she had come to check on him. Knowing that the Hua was deliberately keeping it from her, Bai Qian decided to continue pretending to be unaware to put his mind at ease. The Hua smiled slightly, patted the edge of the bed, and said, "Qianchen, come here." Bai Qian's ears turned red, and she said, I'll just squeeze in with Ollie. Just as she was about to turn and leave, the Hua extinguished the candle, hugged Bai Qian from behind, and whispered in her ear, "Now I'm only holding you with one arm. If you don't want to, you can break free." Bai Qian hesitated for a moment,
then silently hugged the Hua's arm and said, "Can I just take up half of your bed?"
The Hua laughed and said, "With your figure, you probably don't even take up half of my bed." Bai Qian huddled in the corner of the bed. The Hua tugged at her, pulling the blanket over her and turning her over. He asked, "Would you like to sleep in my arms tonight? Or curl up in the corner?" Bai Qian, truly embarrassed, replied, "We can both curl up in the corner together." Her face flushed instantly. The Hua chuckled softly. "That's a good idea." In the middle of the night, the Hua, suppressing a cough of blood, quietly rolled over in bed. Bai Qian was startled. She listened intently and heard the Hua coughing repeatedly outside the palace. She tried to keep her voice low, and a wave of sorrow washed over her. After changing for a while, the Hua returned to bed. Bai Qian, suppressing her sobs, turned around, leaned against the Hua, reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him tightly. Cheng Yu and Ollie returned from the spiritual immortal gathering. Ollie, dragging a sugar cane longer than himself, asked Cheng Yu with great joy, "With so much sugar cane? Mother will be happy to see it, won't she?" Cheng Yu smiled and said, "Of course." As they were talking, Cheng Yu looked up and saw Lingbao Tianzun and the Emperor talking in front of them. She quickly pulled Ollie aside. Lingbao Tianzun sighed and said, "The ancient gods have all returned to chaos after their tribulations. Now, the Emperor has also undergone a tribulation, hasn't he?" The Emperor's eyes were deep as he said, word by word, "I suppose so. A tribulation of the heart."
Cheng Yu was shocked to hear this.
Could it be that the Emperor was also going to return to chaos? She thought she had to tell Fengju about this as soon as possible.
Rouge came to Kunlun Ruins to see Xylan, but was stopped by her second senior brother.
The pain of losing their master 70,000 years ago still lingered. Even though the Celestial Clan and the Winged Clan had reconciled, the hatred for the Winged Realm had never diminished for the disciples of Kunlun Ruins. When Li Jing stood in front of Rouge and drew his sword against her second senior brother, Xylan appeared in time to quell the fight.
Rouge begged Xylan that she had to borrow the alchemy furnace in Kunlun to save the child.
Xylan knew that Rouge had lost all her magic power in the process of refining the pill.
But now the child had too much demonic energy, and Rouge's magic power alone was not enough to refine the pill.
Xylan secretly used half of his life's cultivation to refine the pill. Bai Qian sat with the Hua in the pavilion by the Jade Pool. The Hua was drawing a formation diagram. Since becoming Mo Yuan's apprentice, Bai Qian had found formation diagrams a daunting subject, so she watched the Hua hold the brush. Remarking that his posture was quite elegant, wanting only to linger a few more glances, Cheng Yu returned to the heavenly palace with Ali and happened to see the Hua and Bai Qian together. It was the first time Cheng Yu had ever seen a female deity, and she wanted to touch Bai Qian. Ali stopped them, saying that mother belonged to father, and only father could touch her. "What were you doing?" The Hua and Bai Qian found Ali's mature demeanor utterly adorable. The Hua asked Bai Qian and Ali to sit together so he could paint a portrait of them. Cheng Yu, watching eagerly, also wanted to be included in the painting, and the Hua granted his request. However, after several hours of work, the Hua finally finished. But Cheng Yu was extremely aggrieved. She had worked so hard for so long, only to find that not even a corner of her own clothing was depicted in the painting, and Ali had teased her for a long time. Seeing Cheng Yu's pitiful appearance, Bai Qian comforted her, saying that the Hua had been lacking in strength lately, and painting with one hand was very tiring. She asked him to be more understanding. Cheng Yu coughed twice, lacking in strength. Little Ali innocently asked what lacking in strength meant. Did it mean that father could carry Ali, but not mother?
Bai Qian was embarrassed and didn't know how to answer when suddenly her feet left the ground.
When she came to her senses, the Hua had already carried her on his shoulders, leaving Cheng Yu and Ali looking at each other in bewilderment, and went straight back to Shiwu Palace. The Hua carried Bai Qian back to Ziachun Palace in a very unseemly manner. The celestial maids in the palace tactfully closed the palace doors and left. The Hua placed Bai Qian on the couch. Bai Qian asked the Hua if he still remembered that she wanted to break off their engagement in the West Sea. The Hua froze, lowered his eyelids, and said he remembered.
Bai Qian nestled against the Hua's neck and said that she had only seen her own heart clearly back then.
Now that she and the Hua were in love, she couldn't break off the engagement. Bai Qian calculated the date and said that the 2nd day of the 9th month was an auspicious day. She asked the Hua if they should hold the wedding on that day. The Hua's eyelids suddenly lifted, and his voice trembled as he asked, Qian, could you say it again?
Bai Qian blushed slightly, looked into the Hua's eyes,
and told him word by word, the Hua, I love you. I really love you. I want to be with you forever. The Hua just looked at Bai Qian without answering. Bai Qian was conflicted. Women from Chinku were always so frank, but the Hua had grown up in the 9 heavens, where there were many rules. Wouldn't he think her words were too frivolous?
Suddenly, the Hua rolled over and pressed Bai Qian down. Their bodies pressed tightly together.
The Hua whispered hoarsely in
Bai Qian's ear, Qian, have another child for me.
Bai Qian felt that something was off about his words, but she was so caught up in the Hua's deep affection that she didn't have time to think about it anymore. Xylan took the divine herb that Yanxi had brought. Ling and Yanxi waited at the foot of the mountain.
Ling told Yanxi that Cyan was the goddess.
The second senior brother brought the elixir that Xylone had refined for Yanxi, along with the conditioning prescription that Xylone had written for her. Yanxi was disappointed not to see Xylon.
The baby took the elixir and finally cried for the first time in 300 years.
Ling and Yanxi both wept with joy at the resurrection of this little life. Xylon looked down the mountain and smiled with relief. The second senior brother asked him why he had used half of his cultivation to save the child. Xylon calmly replied that the world was at peace now, and he had no use for so much cultivation. It was enough for him to guard the boundless sea. Night had fallen. Lying on the couch, the Hua slowly asked Bai Qian if 70,000 years ago she had had the chance to seal the Eastern Emperor bell first, would she have gone in place of Mo Yuan? Bai Qian, still drowsy, readily replied that her master's kindness to her was immeasurable, and if given the chance, she would definitely go. No disciple of Kunlun Mountain would hesitate. The Hua understood that the woman he loved was just like that, and all he could do was always be ahead of her. The Hua woke up and stood before the mirror. Bai Qian looked at him with a gentle smile. Bai Qian asked, among the immortals in the heavenly palace, he's considered young, so why does he look older than the emperor? The Hua smiled but didn't answer. He asked if she wanted to get up, and if not, she could lie in his arms and sleep some more. Bai Qian was thirsty and asked the Hua to go out and order someone to make tea. A maid brought in the tea, and Bai Qian secretly put the nourishing pills that Jian had given the Hua into the teapot. The maid saw this and secretly ran to tell Lady Lasu that she had seen Bai Qian drug the Hua. Lady Lasu was shocked. Sujin added fuel to the fire, saying that the 9-tailed fox clan was skilled in using seductive arts, and that the Hua had recovered from Susu's grief so quickly. So perhaps the drug in the teapot was a seductive drug that Bai Qian had given him. Sujin also told Lady Lasu about Fengju stealing the soul-binding lamp, trying to incite Lady Lasu's dissatisfaction with Bai Qian. Sure enough, Lady Lasu, out of love for her son, hurriedly went to the Zichun Palace. The Hua privately told Jayayun to keep a close eye on the Eastern Emperor Bell and, if anything unusual happened, to inform him immediately without telling anyone. Lady Lasu and Sujin arrived at the Washingwu Palace. The Hua already knew that Bai Qian had secretly added Jian's tonic to regulate his internal energy to the tea. After learning the truth, Lasu was quite pleased with her future daughter-in-law's strict upbringing of her father, and suggested that their marriage be arranged sooner.
Which delighted Ali.
Only Sujin, while smiling on the surface, was inwardly resentful that her plans had once again failed. After Lasu left, Bai Qian leaned against the Hua
and complained sullenly, your heavenly clan has so many rules.
The Hua, however, was quite pleased that Bai Qian had become much more lively in his presence. Bai Qian playfully replied that this was simply how she always was. It's just that, as time went on, everyone in the 4 seas and 8 desolations called her aunt, and she couldn't be so unrestrained in public anymore. Thinking about the Hua's reserved nature, Bai Qian decided she should speak to her 4 brothers beforehand and have them mention their marriage to their parents. The Hua went to the Heavenly Emperor to request permission to marry Bai Qian. The Heavenly Emperor was overjoyed. Finally, his grandson was going to marry his principal wife. This time, he personally requested permission for the marriage, so it seemed that he had arranged the marriage quite well. However, the Yue's father reported to the Heavenly Emperor that the UAA had done a good job in destroying the divine herb. But killing the 4 divine beasts left behind by his father was a serious offense. The merits and demerits canceled each other out, and there were still many sins left. According to the rules of the Heavenly Clan, the Hua should go down to the mortal realm to undergo tribulations. The Heavenly Emperor thought this made sense and ordered the Hua to go down to the mortal realm for 60 years. However, the Book of Fate at the Department of Fate left a blank page, and the Hua's life in the mortal realm depended on fate. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Hua's sacrifice. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time!